The survey team's final report was 41 pages. I read all of it in the first week because there was nothing else to do on Vareth 9 station and the signal logs were clean. No anomalies, no subsurface resonance. Biome, inert. Ecosystem classification, terminal decay phase, estimated extinction cascade 90 to 110 years complete. Recommendation, light touch colonial extraction, standard environmental covenant, no special protocols required. The survey team was Vrethian four-armed scholarly elite, the kind that publish in 3 journals simultaneously and CC the classification board on everything. They had been thorough. They had spent 11 days on the surface of Marin's Reach, which is a swamp moon about the size of Wales plus most of the Irish Sea, orbiting a gas giant nobody had bothered to name. They had cored sediment, profiled the water column, cataloged what was still moving in the shallows. They had written 41 pages and they had been wrong about every single conclusion, but not in any way that showed up in their methodology. Their methodology was fine. The thing they missed wasn't in the water column or the sediment cores. It was deeper than that. It had been deeper than that for a long time. I found out about it the same way I find out about most things out here. A sound that didn't belong. My job at Vareth 9 is signals monitoring, passive acoustic array, deep frequency environmental watch, the kind of posting that pays a hazard supplement mostly because of the boredom rather than any actual hazard. The station sits in geostationary lock above Marin's Reach, 1,700 kilometers up, and I run the board alone on the night cycle. The array listens to everything. Seismic, subsurface thermal, biological acoustic, if anything's generating it. Most of what it catches is the gas giant's magnetosphere doing slow electrical business in the upper atmosphere. Background, texture, white noise with better credentials. The anomaly came in at 3:40 on the 14th day after the survey team's departure. I almost logged it as interference and moved on. It was a low-frequency pulse, around 11 Hz, coming from the deep sediment layer on the moon's equatorial shelf, the part the survey team had marked as geologically stable, biologically exhausted, worth approximately nothing. The pulse lasted 4 seconds. Then it repeated 7 seconds later. Then again. Then the interval shortened. I pulled up the survey team's sediment core data and ran a comparison. Their cores had gone down to 40 meters. The acoustic signature I was tracking was originating from below 200. I flagged it and went to make coffee. Here is what I understood at that point, and I want to be clear about this because people have asked me since whether I was scared. I was not scared. I was curious, and I was tired, and I was fairly certain I had just found something that was going to generate a great deal of paperwork. That was the extent of my emotional engagement with the situation. I had been running passive arrays for 11 years, first on Thresh Station at the Kavar Belt margin, then at 2 postings I'm not cleared to name, then here. I had heard a lot of things that didn't belong. Most of them turned out to be equipment drift or geological process or some organism doing something organisms do. A few of them had been stranger than that. None of them had prepared me for what the next 6 hours of logging looked like. But I didn't know that yet. So I made the coffee and I came back to the board and I sat down and I watched the pulse rate continue to accelerate. By 600 it was no longer a pulse. It was a sustained signal broadband rising through the sediment column at a measurable rate. I calculated the ascent velocity. I recalculated it because the first number seemed wrong. It wasn't wrong. Whatever was below 200 meters of sediment was moving upward at approximately 4 meters per hour. It had a lot of sediment to clear. It was in no hurry. That was the part I kept coming back to, not the size of it, which I couldn't measure yet, and not what it might be, which I had no framework for. The pace. 4 meters per hour through compacted anaerobic sediment is not fast. It is also not frantic. It is methodical, and methodology implies something that has a plan, and something that has a plan in 200 meters of cold, dark swamp bed has been waiting long enough to have developed one. I sent a priority flag to the colonial garrison at Vareth, Maine by 6:20. I included the raw logs, the survey team's sediment core data, my ascent velocity calculation, and a single line of notes that read, "Subsurface biological event, non-cataloged, recommend precautionary review." I did not use the word Death World because Marin's Reach had not been classified as one. The survey team had not classified it as one. The survey team had found dead fish and terminal fungal collapse and had written 41 pages about a moon that was winding down. The garrison commander who took my flag was a human. Her name was Warrant Officer Inez Carvalho, and she had been stationed at Vareth, Maine for 8 months, which meant she had been through the onboarding process, which meant she had read the environmental covenant documentation for Marin's Reach, which included the survey team's 41-page report, which she told me later she had flagged for follow-up after page 6 because the sediment cores only went to 40 meters and she had wanted to know why. Nobody had answered that query. It had been sitting in the garrison's administrative queue for 11 days. She pulled 2 Deathworlder qualified members of the garrison's environmental response unit, requisitioned a deep-bore acoustic sonde from the survey station's equipment locker, and had a drop shuttle on the surface of Marin's Reach by 7:40. I watched the telemetry from the station. The sonde went down 310 meters before it found the bottom of the biological column, and what it found was not a single organism. It was a mat, continuous, interconnected, spanning an area the survey team's surface work had covered entirely without knowing what was underneath it. Dormant, sealed, waiting for a thermal trigger the survey team's 11 days of surface work had apparently provided. At 9:12, the first surface-level emergence event registered on my acoustic array. At 9:17, Warrant Officer Carvalho's team filed the first confirmed biological contact report. At 9:31, she transmitted a biome reclassification request to the Colonial Oversight Board with a recommended designation of Class 14 provisional, pending full survey, and a recommended protocol flag of apex biology unknown, surface access suspended. At 9:34, she transmitted a secondary report that was much shorter. It contained 3 data points: the organism's confirmed response behavior toward the garrison team, the garrison team's response, and the outcome. I read it twice. Then I read the survey team's 41-page report one more time, starting from page 1. The thing they had missed was not in their methodology. It was in their assumptions. They had assumed that what they could measure was what there was. 40 meters of core sample, 11 days of surface observation, a biome in terminal decay. They had seen what they expected to see. The decay was real. The extinction cascade was real. What was also real was that below all of it, sealed in cold anaerobic sediment, something had been doing what very old things in very hostile conditions learn to do, holding still and waiting for conditions to change. It had been there long enough that the survey instruments had no reference category for its biochemistry. It had been there long enough that the word dormant was technically accurate and completely useless at the same time. Warrant Officer Carvalho's response team cleared the emergence zone in 4 hours. She filed her final report at 1400, and I have read it several times because it is 17 pages, and it is precise in the way that reports written by people who have been on death worlds are precise, which is to say it does not editorialize, it does not speculate, and it does not use any word that cannot be directly supported by the sensor data. She noted the organism's confirmed extent. She noted its behavior pattern. She noted the measures taken and the results. She noted a recommendation that the colonial extraction plan for Marin's Reach be suspended indefinitely pending reclassification review. She also noted in the final paragraph that the original survey team had done competent work within the scope of what they had been asked to do. She was not being kind. She was being accurate. The survey team had been asked to assess what was visible. They had assessed it correctly. The problem was that on some worlds, the most important thing is never the thing that's visible. It's the thing that has had enough time to learn not to be. I filed my own supplementary log at 14:30, noted the acoustic signatures for archival, and closed the board for the day cycle. Outside the station window, Marin's Reach sat below me in the half-light of the gas giant's reflected glow, swamp green and perfectly still at the surface. The way it had been still when the survey team landed. The way it had been still for longer than either species involved in this situation had existed. It had not been dead, it had been patient. The difference, it turned out, mattered quite a lot.